Hello, this is Tim, Book 1 for July 2020, and I can't believe we're only a few days away from going into Book 2. I already have an idea, so we'll see. I don't like to announce it because sometimes I shift. But we're reading through Police and the Black Man, and we're reading an essay called Boys to Men. I want to focus on children because we need to do something to make a better society for children. And we need to put away our hang-ups because our children can't survive this madness. We're barely surviving it, and to be honest with you, we're not even surviving it. And it doesn't make sense to live in a society when nobody can survive through, or get through, or live in, but have to grind through. It's insane. So I'm focusing on the essay on children. Perceived and overt resistance also causes police to arrest youth for offenses with overly broad statutory definitions, such as resisting arrest, assaulting a police officer, disturbing the peace, and disorderly conduct. Youth in St. Louis and the District of Columbia routinely complain of being charged with resisting arrest in situations where the officer was not justified in making the stop or using force in the first place. A child in the District of Columbia may be arrested for assault on a police officer for a little more than refusing to put his arms out for handcuffing, or lying on the ground with his arms underneath him so the officer cannot reach them. Recall that Emilio Mayfield was charged in Stockton with trespassing and resisting arrest. Tremaine McMillan was charged with a felony count of resisting arrest with violence and disorderly conduct. Ultimately, the way youth perceive police and the way police perceive youth will determine the type of outcome of their interactions. Police expect trouble from black boys, and black boys expect to be disrespected and harmed by the police. Suspicion and distrust are mutual. Is there any way forward? The seminal question is whether we can ever alter the preconceived negative opinions and attitudes that black boys and police have about each other. Whatever strategies we employ must start early in a child's life, before the negative views are entrenched and intractable. Reforms finding a way forward. Mistrust and alienation between young black males and police are so deeply entrenched that we need radical, sweeping change. Our quest for reform will require us to rethink the presence of police in schools and envision a new space for genuine and meaningful positive interactions between black youth and police. Reform must also include officer training and adolescent development, procedural justice, and implicit bias, and require deep shifts in police policy, procedure, and infrastructure. Reform should also require us to rethink how courts interpret race and adolescent behavior under the Fourth Amendment. Might not have to worry about cops in schools now. I don't think schools are going to open back up. Not in the way we think. But let's finish with the essay. Rethinking cops in schools. Any effort to improve relationships between black boys and the police must attend to the role of schools in socializing children's views of law enforcement. Given the failure of SROs to prevent mass shootings and the relatively low success SROs have had in altering the views of police among youth, schools should rethink their recent hyper-dependence on police in schools. Recommendations for reform range from entirely moving officers from schools to keeping officers in schools but refocusing their objectives. Some schools have increased training for SROs while simultaneously decreasing the scope of disciplinary issues SROs can address, specifically limiting them to drug and weapons possession in schools. The Denver Public Schools, for example, entered an agreement with the Denver Police Department to prevent officers from writing tickets for minor misbehavior such as bad language and require officers to participate in training on topics such as teenage psychology and cultural competence. In Philadelphia in 2014, the police chief instructed his officers to stop arresting youth for minor infractions such as schoolyard fights and and possession of small amounts of marijuana, which together accounted for about 60% of all school-based arrests. While these are important and necessary reforms, they probably do not go far enough to permanently alter the perception of police among young black males. So we'll continue to read through it. And I don't know, we may not have schools to go back to. So now we're just dealing with the police in the neighborhood. And I think police are starting to fall back, even though we do see some aggressive behavior with police. But as they start to prosecute police for their aggressive behavior, they're going to fall back. And we have to be prepared for that fallback because, believe it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, our community has some bad elements. And we know these people and we know their families. And it's time to lean on their families, to lean on these people, boys or girls, to stop destroying the community. But also give them space to be more constructive in the community. That's the key. Matter of fact, if you give them the space to be constructive, they're not going to go out and shoot at each other and kill each other and fight. I firmly know that. And I think I know that because we've never done that. We haven't done that in 50 years. And the last time we gave black people space, they actually achieved and performed and developed. So I think that's the way to go. Until next time, please take care of your mind, take care of your body, and be safe. And I thank you for your support.